Hello. My skepticism toward mainstream historians stems from a pattern I've personally witnessed, where historical narratives shift not necessarily based on new truth, but based on convenience and possible ulterior motives. Take ancient Egypt as an example. As a child, I was taught the Egyptians were black. In middle school, they became white. By high school, they were Arabic. In college, back to black, and now the narrative has either been left ambiguous or reset to Arabic again. These are not innocent corrections. This pattern is deliberate, and it is directly relevant to the subject of this series. Consider the Neanderthals as another example. Growing up, they were portrayed as primitive cave dwellers, dim-witted and brutish. That characterization held firm until genetic research revealed that most people of non-African descent carry Neanderthal DNA. Suddenly, the narrative shifted, and Neanderthals became surprisingly sophisticated and intelligent. This is worth noting. All non-African humans carry Neanderthal DNA. These are not coincidences. When the story changes based on who it reflects upon, that is not scholarship, that is agenda. The Fall of Khazaria, 965-969 AD. Khazaria did not collapse overnight. It crumbled slowly under a century of relentless pressure caught between the rising power of the Rus from the north and the restless steppe peoples pressing in from the east. The Rus-Khazar Wars. The tension began as early as 860-880 AD, when the first Rus' raiders struck Khazar towns along the river routes, testing the edges of a once formidable empire. What started as opportunistic plundering soon became something more deliberate. By 913-943 AD, Rus's expeditions had grown bolder and more devastating. They swept through the Volga trading colonies, gutting the commercial networks that had been Khazaria's lifeblood. Jewish merchant communities among the heaviest casualties of the destruction. Then came the killing blow. Between 965 and 969 AD, Sviatoslav of Kiev marched his forces through the heart of the Khazar world, razing its greatest cities one by one, Artil, Semender, and Sarkel. Each conquest stripping away another pillar of state power, until nothing remained to hold the empire together. The aftermath. What followed was not a single story, but many. The Jewish population of Khazaria scattered along several different paths. Some made their way into Crimea, Ukraine, Poland, and Hungary, carrying their traditions into new lands. Others found refuge among the mountain Jewish communities of the Caucasus, blending into ancient and isolated enclaves that had existed long before Khazaria rose to power. Still others gradually assimilated into the Slavic and Turkic peoples around them, their distinct identity dissolving across generations. And many simply did not survive. Lost to the violence, the displacement, and the long chaos that followed the fall of a world. I had to pause my investigation at this stage, because the AI systems were repeatedly providing false or misleading information. One example, they insisted there were no Khazar DNA samples available for analysis, something I have now confirmed is untrue. I also pointed out that the responses showed clear bias. Every conclusion was framed as if it were already proven that Ashkenazi Jews are not descended from the Khazars. even though the published studies do not prove or disprove that origin. What the data actually shows is that direct comparisons between confirmed Khazar DNA and Ashkenazi Jewish DNA remain extremely limited. Most genetic studies have relied on modern surrogate populations instead of authentic ancient Khazar samples. The academic consensus rejecting the Khazar hypothesis was formed long before robust ancient DNA tools existed. Scientific inquiry is not always neutral. Funding priorities, institutional pressures, and political sensitivities around Jewish identity shape which questions get asked and how results are framed. The Khazar question carries political weight, which means it is not always approached with full detachment. Declaring the issue settled before applying the best available genomic methods is premature. What is still needed, and has not yet been done in a comprehensive, transparent, peer-reviewed way, is a direct, genome-wide comparison between authenticated Khazar burial DNA and modern Ashkenazi Jewish genomes. Until that analysis is performed and openly published, the question cannot be considered resolved. My conclusions. Using their own published data that modern genetics claim about Ashkenazi origins rest on incomplete paternal evidence, shifting interpretations, and selective reporting, especially when compared to the far richer historical, linguistic, and genealogical evidence for African and Afro-diasporic Israelite lineages, or the historical data and customs other Hebraic communities carry. The core evidence for Ashkenazi origins is fundamentally circular in its reasoning. The genetic samples used in these studies are drawn from known Ashkenazi populations, so of course they come back Ashkenazi and share the same genetic disease markers. This tells us little beyond what was already assumed. Shared internal genetics does not establish ancient descent from Israelite populations, nor does it rule out significant Khazarian ancestry as a contributing lineage. Demonstrating that Ashkenazi Jews are genetically related to one another is not the same as demonstrating where that lineage ultimately originates. On top of that, the paternal lineage study drawn from ancient DNA had a sample size too small to draw any meaningful conclusions from. Their action demonstrates a clear pattern of cover-up and misinformation. The answer is why lie and hide the truth if you have nothing to hide.